Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, music to heal our wounded souls and our wounded world. A church in Haydenville with a reputation for radical inclusivity, activism, and compassion, as well as some pretty great music, will lead us in an interfaith song circle to mourn the continuing loss of life and ongoing devastation of Gaza at the church this weekend. We'll hear from Haydenville Congregational Church's music director, Mayor Berger.
And another word of the year. Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster in Springfield, will tell us about the American Dialect Society's slightly saucy choice for their word of the year.
But first, affordable housing in the 413. Since 1988, Valley Community Development has worked on addressing the needs of our community through economic and housing development. Valley CDC, Community Development Corporation, not Center for Disease Control, serves Hamden, Hampshire, and Franklin counties for home ownership and small business services, but focuses on Amherst, Hadley, Northampton, and East Hampton primarily when it comes to affordable housing development.
We're sure you have to field that a whole bunch for a reason. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Valley CDC has to date built or preserved over 400 affordable homes and apartments in our community and continues to build affordable housing because they believe housing is a human right and that there is a dire need in our region. They have taught, counseled, and helped almost 9,000 people in our area in their home ownership journey, supporting them in building equity through informed decision-making.
And because they know that small businesses help make communities vibrant, they've also worked with almost 3,000 business owners and entrepreneurs, helping them take ideas into reality.
Their new-ish executive director is Alexis Breitniker. Alexis comes to Valley Community Development Corporation after almost 8 years at Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, CISA, who you might know about through our show because we talk to them every week.
Yes.
Where she served as director of development. But before that, Alexis was the development manager for the trustees of reservations and worked for the Melville Charitable Trust in Boston.
Maybe you should help them put a statue in New Bedford like was in the newscast that we heard.
And then we'll take it out to sea.
Yeah. Alexis has also considerable experience working with nonprofit organizations that support low-income communities with an emphasis on finding solutions to homelessness. Welcome to the Fabulous 413, Alexis.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yay.
We knew each other through CISA and then
Indeed.
ran to each other in the East Hampton Co-op.
Indeed.
To welcome you onto this show to talk about the great work that you're now doing with this other wonderful organization, Valley CDC.
Yes.
There's a pile of things that you're involved in and that have recently happened. We're going to try and get to all of them because they are all really cool. One of the ones, we're going to skip around, but one of the really cool ones that you brought up is that you're converting a building in Northampton to affordable housing, and it's going to be heated with geothermal.
Yes, it is. I'm going to back up just a second and do like a little bit of place setting about why affordable housing is even needed, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
So in the western part of the state of Massachusetts, where we are right now, there's about 3,000 people who are homeless on any given night. That number's a little bit stale because it came out in the beginning of January of 2023. I would say from like ears on the ground, it's probably gone up since then, given what's going on in the world. And there's a shortage of about 11,000 units for the number of people. So there's a big gap between how many people need affordable housing and how much affordable housing is available.
But not all the people that need affordable housing are
Correct.
homeless, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. It is. Yes, so there's this gap of about 11,000 units, and Valley Community Development Corporation, we're pretty small. There's 11 of us. There's 3 people working in the real estate
One
department.
for every 1,000 that needs housing.
Yeah.
With a 4th fellow who's joined us, which is amazing. But we obviously can't solve the problem by ourselves. So I want to note that there's a number of other organizations that are working on this in the affordable housing sphere. But our niche seems to be certain communities in Hampshire County. And so now I'm going to talk about the nursing home that you just brought up, please, which is for folks who know Northampton, there's the former Northampton Nursing Home on Bridge Road. It's been abandoned and vacant since, I don't know when, about 12 years-ish. Valley bought it about 2 years ago, and we're going to convert it to 60 units of affordable housing, which is huge for us, and it's huge for the community of Northampton. The city has been a tremendous supporter of ours, and the super cool thing that Khalees just mentioned is that we're doing geothermal to heat the building. So what that is going to involve is boring down into the ground somewhere around 400 feet, like 40 times, creating these crazy small wells that are then going to like take the energy of the earth and forgive me that I do not know all the technicalities around this.
You're not a geothermal expert?
I am not, but I actually have someone on staff who could probably do a far better job than I am about explaining this. But it's taking the Earth's energy essentially and converting it into heat and cooling. And this is not used in multifamilies in Massachusetts because it's expensive to put in.
Yeah.
However, it's not that expensive to run compared to other systems, and it breaks far less frequently. So we got a $2 million grant from the state through Department of Energy to help subsidize the geothermal. Otherwise, you can't do it.
Was it specifically geared for geothermal for affordable housing, or was it just like, hey, try to put in a building that has geothermal?
So no, we applied specifically to fund the geothermal. The grant was for any sort of like energy retrofit or energy efficiency. This is what we wanted to use it for because we knew we couldn't make the funding streams work otherwise because it's stupid expensive.
Yeah.
No offense to everybody who's trying to like get people to put in heat pumps, but it's really expensive to do.
We were talking with the 5 colleges earlier, like last year, about like their efforts and the sheer volume that UMass has to try to do. UMass Amherst has to try to do to make it worthwhile is insane, and their field is. I would believe when they talked to us was like 600 or 700 wells. And the amount they were spending on it was nuts.
Yeah. And this is, it's a 72,000 square foot building. So there's a lot of energy that's going to need to be in there to keep it at the temperature we're required to keep it at for tenants.
So this is a unique situation where it's a former nursing home that you're putting geothermal in. Is that usually the affordable housing that you're working with in specifically Hampshire County is what Valley CDC is doing? How is most of the affordable housing coming online? Alex Breitneiker, who is the executive director of Valley CDC.
Sure. So we have a mixture of new builds and renovations. The nursing home is a rehab. We're keeping the outside essentially, and the entire inside is getting redone. We have new stuff happening. So we just finished building and have folks leased up in Amherst. We did 28 studios there right next to Amherst College, if folks are familiar with that. It's a beautiful blue building. That is studios, so small, like 300 square feet, deeply affordable. So most of the folks in there are pretty low income. And that building is actually Passive House certified, which is a whole nother realm of energy efficiency and environmental sustainability. It means the walls are super thick. We had to order special windows and special doors to keep the energy in. There was all sorts of seal testing about air exchange and airflow. But what it means is hopefully the amount of energy it takes to heat and cool it is reduced because we've put in all of these really beefy insulation. There's also, we could only use certain types of paint because there's all these thresholds around what Passive House means. So that was new construction, ground up, which is what we tend to build because often trying to retrofit existing buildings can be more expensive. And sometimes it doesn't quite meet the needs. So what one of my staff always says is that the world of affordable housing development is really dependent on site, and stuff tends to come to us, and then we see if we can make it work. Does it work financially? Does it work for the tenants? Does it work for the community? As you may or may not know, we had a little bit of a debacle in Hadley when we bought the former Econo Lodge.
Yeah. Which is what now?
So right now it's housing Craig Stores.
Which is a shelter.
Yep. They have a number of folks who are coming out of homelessness staying there. So Craig Stores is renting space from us while we get our ducks in a row. And part of getting those ducks in a row was going to the zoning board of Hadley and asking them for essentially a permit to be able to convert it from a hotel to housing, and they said no.
Why did that? What was their excuse? Why did they say no?
So they said no because the zoning board is they're not an elected body. It was 3 people who did what they felt like was the will of the community, which was we don't really need affordable housing in Hadley.
Sorry. The idea of any town saying that they don't need affordable housing sends a very specific message to a lot of its population.
It does.
Period.
It does. So we had a lot of support in town, and this was the decision-making body, and they said no. So we then appealed their decision, and we ultimately prevailed in that appeal. So the exciting news is that we can move forward.
Yay!
The bummer news was that we had to go through that whole rigmarole of some like pretty unpleasant times.
But that also like sets you back in terms of like getting people lined up to like do the reconstruction,
Absolutely.
getting like the prices that you were originally quoted
Absolutely.
for any of the supplies that you need. Like the amount of setback that you like, it's just there are so many other repercussions for that one small decision.
Yeah.
So
So even that delay, like with the nursing home.
In Northampton?
In Northampton, thank you. We'd applied for funding and weren't awarded, and so then we had to apply again. And just that 7-month delay increased the price for the project by almost $5 million.
Wow.
Whoa.
So it's big, right? Like we're talking 60 units, 72,000 square feet. So like each little dollar that gets added to each little thing, like incremental, like explosion. But you're totally right that any setback right now in this market is going to make things more expensive. And more expensive means we're cobbling together more sources of funding, and it just makes it harder all around. And as I just said, we have this crisis right now of, this shortage of units, people that are homeless, increasing numbers of people who are homeless. And so like my staff, we're all like, let's make it happen now. We want it to happen. And then with the world is like, oh, it's going to take 7 to 9 years.
Well, we're going to hear more from Alexis Breiteneicher, the Executive Director of Valley Community Development Corporation. We're going to hear about how they work with the Fellowship for Equitable Affordable Housing and increasing work with BIPOC housing developers and more.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We're here with Alexis Breiteneicher, who is the Executive Director for Valley Community Development Corporation. We're talking about affordable housing, specifically with your work in affordable housing in Hampshire County. You did mention, I think off the air, that Springfield, where we are right now, kind of sets the rate for what affordable housing means all up and down this area. Can you compare and contrast what that means and what it means for affordable housing in, say, Northampton versus affordable housing in, say, Springfield?
Sure. So this is a little into the weeds, but the how organizations are able to charge for rents is set by something called the fair market rent, and they're tied to metro statistical areas. And Northampton is in the Springfield metro statistical area. And that means that rents are a little bit lower than they are in other parts of the state. So what we as an organization can collect in rent is capped at certain rates. It usually goes up every year. Sometimes it goes down. It's tied to all sorts of complicated formulas. But what is true is that costs, like day-to-day costs of electricity and like propane and natural gas and repair costs are all the same in Western Mass as they are in Eastern Mass, more or less. But the amount of money that we're able to collect in rent is dramatically lower because of these rent prices. What that means for us as an organization who provides deeply affordable housing to people is that we are not able to build up enough reserves often, particularly in older properties that require a lot of maintenance, to then do the maintenance.
Oh.
And that's hard for us. It's hard for people who own affordable housing because we want to make sure that our tenants are living in the best possible spaces. And when we run into these discrepancies between what we're able to collect in rent and what we actually need to maintain our properties, it sometimes doesn't make for the best situation. And the state has been very, very gung-ho about creation of new housing, which is 100% needed. And there's been this sort of like shoved to the side a little bit of like, let's keep what we already have. Mm-hmm. And as you know, somebody who owns almost 100 and we have almost 110 units right now, we want to make sure that those stay in really good condition and that we're doing the best job we can to make sure our tenants are happy where they're at. And this is an ongoing challenge. It's not unique to us. It's unique to parts of Western Mass, really more rural parts of the state where the rents just don't quite match up.
For the construction that you're doing, there's a lot of like very eco-conscious, very environmentally friendly initiatives that you have in place for this construction. With that lack of funding that you're getting, does that create some sort of friction in the new places that you're trying to build and what you decide to do with them?
Yeah, so like I said, it's really so dependent on site and what we often are trying to do. So for an example, I'll talk about another property that the city of Northampton sold to Valley for $1. This weird little chunk of land right behind City Hall in downtown Northampton.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
On Crafts Avenue. And we have to look at that. I don't, architects do, look at that space and say, like, what can we fit in there that then once people move in, we know will cover costs of the building.
Right.
So it is this weird slotting in and trying to make it work within what the potential footprint is going to be. So that building is going to be tall, and we're going to cram in a bunch of single unit occupancy, so efficiencies essentially in that building. Because without doing that, it doesn't work financially.
Can you make it look like a castle so it'll match City Hall in Northampton?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Just put finials on it everywhere.
We're speaking with Alexis Breitneiker, who is the executive director of Valley CDC. Tell us about your partnership with the Fellowship for Equitable Affordable Housing and the aim of increasing BIPOC developers to be working with.
Absolutely. So Valley is, I believe, the only Western Mass CDC taking part of this fellowship program. It originated with an organization, a CDC in the eastern part of the state, who realized, like, oh, so we do all this affordable housing development, and I think nationwide only 5% of affordable housing developers are actually BIPOC. So who lives in our properties? It's majority, actually, for our properties, it's majority Hispanic, with the second highest rate of folks who are Black, and then we have white folks in there. So if all of the affordable housing developers look like me, but we're serving folks who don't look like me, like that's an issue, right? Yeah. So the fellowship program was really made to train BIPOC folks in the realm of affordable housing, which is, as you would imagine, pretty niche, pretty weird. Not a lot of people like grow up saying like, I'm going to be an affordable housing developer, but they should, because it's actually super cool.
It is really cool.
So the fellowship program is really like a training program to get more folks into affordable housing space.
That's wonderful.
Yes, and we're thrilled we have a fellow with us for the next 2 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about how the Valley CDC interacts with the recently proposed bond bill.
Oh, yeah.
$4.1 billion back in October from Maura Healey's office.
Indeed. So the housing bond bill comes out every 5 years. This is the largest bond bill that's ever been proposed. As an affordable housing developer, we're pretty thrilled about it. Like, all of the things that we want to see in it are in it. There's some pieces that like maybe don't work so great for Western Mass. One of them being there's this transfer tax that when somebody sells a home over a certain price, some of that money would go then into a pool to fund affordable housing development. So the threshold for that in Western Mass is too high. It's $1 million. Like, there's not a whole lot of homes that are getting sold for $1 million in Western Mass. It works great for the Boston area.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we're like, well, this is a great idea, and could you maybe change it a little bit? There's some other pieces that like are really great in theory, but don't have money attached to them, like creating a pool for supportive services, which is like case management-y type stuff that a lot of folks who are coming out of a background with trauma or coming off the streets need case management, and you need support services, and it's something that's often dramatically underfunded. So that's in the bond bill, but there's no money attached to that. So like my pessimistic side says, well, that means it's not going to happen. So, we're pushing to get money attached to those sort of things. So there's actually the first hearing for the bond bill next week on the 18th at the State House. You can listen in, or you can write in testimony, or you can go testify, which I probably am going to do, because it's super important. Most of the pieces, the funding streams that affordable housing developers use are in that bond bill. So if it doesn't go, or if it doesn't go with the amount of money, there's not, like, you just can't create housing. There isn't like an alternative source. You cannot use philanthropy, for example, to build the 40,000 units that the Healey office is proposing need to get built in Massachusetts. The foundations are not going to cut it. Private donations are not going to cut it. You need these big state and federal subsidies, and that's what's in the bond bill.
Alexis Breitneiker, the executive director of Valley Community Development Corporation. Thanks so much for joining us. Later in the show, an interfaith concert at a church in Haydenville where the community will sing and grieve for Gaza. We'll chat with music director Mayor Berger.
Up next, yet another organization of word nerds has chosen yet another word of the year. We'll talk with our word nerd, Emily Brewster, about the American Dialect Society's word of 2023.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
How was the break? Did you get everything done that you had to get done?
Not remotely.
Same. I was going to install a hardwood floor, but I couldn't get the lumber people to get back to me, so then I just sat on my couch and watched kung fu movies mostly.
I meant to start a knitting project, but instead I just finished a really long, depressing book for another project I'm doing and then baked a lot of cookies.
Yeah.
Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Are we going to talk about that email I sent you, or what do you want to do?
We'll talk about that next time. But this time, the American Dialect Society just had their Word of the Year vote.
Oh, cool.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to tell you what it is, but I want to ask you, I know there are certain words we're not allowed to say on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Can I replace one with its German equivalent?
I think we're going to have to make this happen, right?
I feel like that's fine. Like the people who know, I think
Well, I'm
it's
going to have to tell you the whole word. Okay, the whole word, the word of the year is "enshittification." So I thought maybe we could call it "enshittification."
and scheisification.
Or we could call it enshootification, because nobody has any problem with the word shoot. But every time anybody
I feel like
says
Americans
shoot,
should really have more problems with the word
absolutely.
shoot.
But they always
Yeah.
mean.
And if we say enshootification, people will think that we are
Talking
actually
about
killing
guns.
people. We've had,
Right.
Yeah.
we've already
Well-
had how many mass shootings
what
this year?
about
We're
this
on the
then?
9th.
What about?
Well, and enshittification is really true to the word's construction.
It is.
Okay, I was
It
going to
is.
say enpoopification.
I thought about impoopification.
No, and scheisification is also relatively close to the original in a way that still is fun to say and easier to say than impoopification.
Right. Well, now we've revealed what the word of the year is. Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary in Springfield. We talked about your word of the year, which was authentic. We talked about Oxford English Dictionary's word of the year.
Which was Riz, trying to get in with the youngins.
Yeah, what is this other organization that we're going to talk about their word of the year?
This is the organization that started Word of the Year as a phenomenon. It's the
Ooh.
American Dialect Society.
Cool.
And they chose their first Word of the Year in 1990.
What was it? Do you remember?
1990 was bush lips,
I don't know.
meaning insincere political rhetoric.
Wow, because
Oh,
like
that trick.
George H.W. Bush.
Yes.
Oh, read my lips.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Now, the American Dialect Society is a volunteer organization. Anybody can be a member, but it is really a society for linguists and other people who have a great interest in language.
Are you a member?
So I am a member. Yes.
Nice.
Yay.
I did not go to the annual meeting, which is where this happens. There were, I think, 200 people who voted on the different words that had been nominated, and there are a lot of different categories. It's a playful event, but these are people who are involved with language for a living. Linguists, lexicographers, etymologists, grammarians, researchers, writers.
It's like a nerd
So-
conference for word nerds, a Comic-Con.
Very much so.
I have a song for you for grammarians.
Do you?
Yeah.
What is
Really?
it?
Tongue Clucking Grammarian by MC Frontalot.
Oh, cool. Well-
Tongue-clucking grammarians.
Yeah.
That sounds, yeah.
So this year, this American Dialect Society has voted which word?
The word is enshisification.
So people out there, you know what she's replacing it with, even though the American Dialect Society used the real deal 4-letter word that George Carlin talked about that we would get in trouble with if we said it on the radio right now.
Indeed.
And it is defined as the worsening of a digital platform through reduction in quality of service.
So the X move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and among others.
Among others.
This is a term that was coined by Cory Doctorow, who is
That tracks.
he's a scholar and a writer and a blogger, and he used it on Twitter maybe or somewhere else, and people just grasped this word instantly and started using it. Everybody grokked the word, as the kids say, and
Grok
started
is
using
the thing
it.
that I found on formerly Twitter for the first time ever yesterday. What the heck does that word
Really?
mean?
Only yesterday?
Yeah, I know who Gronk is,
After the touchdown, personal foul, number 87.
but I don't know what Grok is.
Grok is kind of. I feel like Grok is it is equivalent to glomp, but
I don't know what either of those are.
I don't know what glomp is.
Oh.
Grok is much older than Gronk, by the way. And it was coined by Robert A. Heinlein in Stranger in a Strange Land, written in 1961.
Oh. And
So
what does it mean?
it's a word that derives from Martian.
Well, then why on Twitter? So Grok is like the name of a bot that will like write things for you, I think, like a Chat GPT type thing.
Oh, I don't know about
me
that
look.
one. I just know the verb grok, how I used it. It means to understand profoundly and intuitively.
Ah, so that makes sense that they would name some sort of bot that on formerly
It
Twitter,
sure does.
which has been enchisified, which is the word that we're really talking about right now, the American
Yes.
Dialect Society's word of 2023.
Yes. So Cory Doctorow, this is how he talked about it. Here is how platforms die. First, they are good to their users. Then they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Finally, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves. Then they die. I call this enshisification.
But he didn't say scheisification.
I kind of like it in German better.
I don't.
I think it's really good in German. And actually, one of the things that appeals to me about this word is that its construction is very Germanic, right? It's got like the N prefix.
Right.
It reads like a German word. You know, they've got words like Lebensmittelgeschäft, meaning grocery store, right? They string all these syllables together all the time. And that's just how that language does it. And this word is very much in keeping with that kind of building.
But we're not talking about German or other languages right now. We're talking about the American Dialect Society. Who has picked this word. We've talked about Twitter and even about how it has been enshisified by changing its name to X, and also now has a Grok feature on there that says it's an intelligent AI bot that will answer all your questions for you, a la Siri or whatever. What else pushed enshisification to the top of the list of the American Dialect Society?
Well, unlike in the Merriam-Webster Word of the Year, it wasn't chosen because the word was used in a lot of different contexts. It's because this word resonated with people so much, but not just because of Twitter. People say that this is, and shisification has also happened on Amazon. And how old is Bandcamp? Like, people think that Reddit has been enshisified. People are seeing it in
Reddit
digital platforms everywhere.
Started in the mud to begin with. Don't go on Reddit, people.
Yeah, and Facebook kind of used to be fun, and now it just feels weird and boring, and like, I don't know.
It's mostly ads now. There's very little in between there. There's no real platform that's populated and fun, I feel like.
I'm going back to MySpace.
Oh my God, wow. That's a take.
This vote was, there are a number of words were nominated, and they also have lots of different categories. So we have lots of things to talk about here.
What other categories are there?
There's most likely to succeed. There is political word of the year, digital word of the year, informal word of the year, acronym/initialism of the year, for those who distinguish the two.
Yeah.
AI related word of the year, most creative word of the year, euphemism of the year.
Oh.
And that's it.
Pick through those categories of a couple that you really thought were particularly good. Like, I kind of want to know the euphemism of the year.
Me too.
Okay, let's skip to the euphemism of the year. There were 5 nominees. Maybe you can guess which one won. Stenographer, defined as journalists seen as uncritically reporting statements made by officials and others in power.
I like that.
Effective altruism, movement ostensibly to benefit humanity, used as an excuse for spending other people's money. Artificial intelligence, computerized simulation of human intelligence that is not actually intelligent. Another one, structurally restrictive housing, solitary confinement, rebranded by the New York City Department of Correction.
Yuck. I hate that one.
And Freebird, alternative to empty nester, promoted by Gwyneth Paltrow.
I like that one.
'Cause I'm as free as a bird now.
Which one won?
I mean, AI won, but like...
Did it?
The artificial intelligence, you think, is the euphemism of the year, police?
I mean, I don't like it. It's not the one that I want to win.
But is it? Is it the one that won?
No, the one that won is, I think the one that is the truest euphemism, structurally restrictive housing,
Oh,
as a term used for solitary confinement. That is like classic euphemism, right?
Yeah.
The institution, some wrongdoer renames the wrong they are doing with a name that is more palatable somehow. Structurally restrictive housing.
Yes.
Oh,
Were there other of
Okay.
those categories that Emily Brewster mentioned before we jump away from this that you wanted to hear the winner for there, Khalees?
I mean, I'm curious about the political word of the year.
Me too.
also.
okay. I/P is shorthand for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Next one is hot labor summer / hot union summer. The summer of 2023, when a number of unions went on strike. Here's another one. Context. Word invoked by presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn to questions at a House hearing about prohibiting speech on campus.
Yikes.
And then the other one is just the watermelon emoji. It's a symbol of Palestinian solidarity used on social media.
Ah, wow, that's interesting because I didn't know about that until pretty recently too. So that's kind of fascinating. What one won in that category?
The emoji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh, well done, American Dialect Society.
I'm so glad that I know that this organization exists now.
Yeah, they seem like a ton of fun.
Right?
And we're speaking with Emily Brewster, our resident wordster and member of the American Dialect Society from Merriam-Webster in Springfield. And the official word of the year was Entscheisification, although the Scheiss is us using the German instead of the English for what they really actually voted for. Is there more interesting things on that particular word, Emily Brewster?
No, but there are other runners up that we could talk about. But maybe we could just quickly run through the most creative word of the year category.
Oh, yes.
'Cause I think there are 4 delightful nominees. How about Delulu, meaning delusion? As in Delulu is the solulu. Delusion is the solution.
That's just fun to say.
I like that.
That is fun to say.
I do like
Yeah.
Delulu.
Delulu. All right, another one. Tush push, quarterback sneak for short yardage, perfected by the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, this was awesome. I love that this happened this year, and I love that other teams tried to do it and they couldn't do it as well as the Eagles. Really funny.
And it's also called the brotherly shove.
They're back in BS territory. Brotherly shove, that is. And it's a first down.
City of brotherly shove.
So that just is extra funny because right before we started talking, I was looking. Somebody made a meme about a letter that Chopin wrote, and historians trying to make him basically saying, "I'd love to make out with you" to this dude as heterosexual as possible, and that's kind of what brotherly shove sounds like to me. It's like, no, just let it be queer. It's totally
Embrace
fine.
the queerness of it.
Right.
All right, another one in the most creative word of the year category is Kenaissance. The Renaissance in the wake of the Barbie movie's depiction of Ken.
The Kenaissance. Oh.
Kenaissance, yeah. Other words in that same realm that were not actually nominated were Kenergy and Knuff.
Here's the thing. You're not supposed to put all the attention on Ken. I'm guilty because I dressed up as Ken one day during the march. Get it. But it's the Barbie movie, man. He's supposed to be made fun of. He's not supposed to get 3 words that people focus on.
If not, we're kind of spoiling it, but is not the movie in no small part about Ken attempting to get more attention to himself?
Well done, Ken. I even got a Mojo Dojo Casa House candle from somebody as a holiday gift. Khalees.
I think you earned that candle. I think you did.
This shall henceforth be known as Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House.
You don't have to say dojo and house and casa.
But you do because it feels good.
Is that all the creative ones?
Well, there's one more, just the one that I'm not really sure I can say. It's not as Holocene, meaning the current era of human history defined by the ubiquity of as holes.
I see. We've arrived in that era, I do believe. Barbie just needed more words.
There are also some good acronyms and initialisms of the year. Some of them you know. Okay, here's the only one that that is unfamiliar to me. MOOP, which stands for Matter Out of Place. Waste material left behind at an event, especially Burning Man.
Well, there was a Seinfeld joke where they were playing trivia, and the answer was the Moors, but it was misprinted on the card as the Moops.
That's not Moops, you jerk. It's Moors. It's a misprint.
I'm sorry, the card says Moops.
And so that became like a 1990s meme where people would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's the Moops." So what were the runners-up for the actual American Dialect Society Word of the Year, which we have now euphemized ourselves in some ways as Entscheisification, Emily Brewster from Merriam-Webster?
Yeah. Baby girl, defined specifically as an older male fictional character or celebrity seen as emotionally damaged, helpless, or vulnerable.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Ceasefire. Rallying cry for those seeking a stoppage of hostilities in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yep.
Context, we mentioned earlier, was also a nominee. The word derogatory in parentheses is a parenthetical comment humorously appended after a word that might not be expected to be derogatory. So maybe if you call somebody baby girl, you have to put derogatory after it. So they don't think that you...
I meant that as a derogatory statement. That's the audio way of putting it in parentheses, I suppose.
Girly is a lighthearted and affectionate term of address for young women, also used in a broader, more gender-inclusive way. Kenaissance is in this category also. Oh, I like this one. Let someone cook. allow a person to do something that they are good at without interference.
I knew about that one.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. Okay, let them cook. And the last one is stochastic parrot. Large language model that can generate plausible synthetic text without having any understanding.
Like a parrot.
Like a parrot, although parrots, I think, understand some stuff.
Do they? I thought they just repeated.
I feel like it's more like that one dude on Twitter who made the weird Olive Garden commercial. That seems like a stochastic parrot.
The menu is here. Lasagna wings with extra Italy.
I shall eat Italian, citizens.
It used AI to generate this crazy thing.
My mouth is full of soup.
We're here, they're here.
Well, thank you, Emily Brewster from Merriam-Webster and from your other organization that you're a member of there, the American Dialect Society. Well done on this word. I wonder, I'm almost afraid to think of what the political word of 2024 is going to be when we have this conversation next year, I hope. But I'll also say next week, Penelope from Shelburne Falls sent us a question for the Word Nerd, and we'll get to that next week. If you have a question for the Word Nerd that you want addressed linguistically, you can send it to us here, thefab413@nepm.org.
Yeah, glomp onto our inbox.
Thank you, Emily Brewster.
Oh, you're so welcome. Happy New Year.
Up next, an interfaith concert at a church in Haydenville where the community will sing and grieve for Gaza. We'll chat with the music director from the church who is behind the event, Mayor Berger.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, homegrown in Hatfield, Massachusetts, and providing energy savings for their customers for over 10 years. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. This Saturday afternoon at Haydenville Congregational Church, sing and grieve for Gaza. The church's music director, Mayor Berger, will lead an interfaith song circle to mourn the continuing loss of life and ongoing devastation of Gaza.
She'll be joined by other singers and easy-to-learn songs. Free will donations will be accepted with proceeds to aid humanitarian efforts in Gaza. Joining us is the music director at Haydenville Congregational, Mayor Berger.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. The former editor-in-chief of the Daily Hampshire Gazette, Jim Foodie, who's a congregation member of the congregation there, put this event on our radar, although it is also on the NEPM events page right now. Despite what it says there, it does not go from 4 p.m. until midnight.
Although if you find a safe place to sing for peace until midnight, then by all means, more power to you.
Yeah.
What I loved about when he reached out to me to tell me about this event and what it says about you is that, you're going to be joined by all sorts of people in the congregation to sing about the rising death toll in Gaza, which breaks everyone's heart, I think, in one way, shape, or form. But you're not just grieving the loss of Palestinians, which is outrageous at this point in numbers, but the Hamas attack, too. And I think a lot of people feel like they need to choose one side or the other. And this using music to say this horrible loss of life and atrocity going on in this New Jersey-sized, even smaller piece of the world is breaking all of our hearts. And to me, when I feel that way, what I go to is music. So the idea that this is the way that you're going to be addressing the situation with a congregation that has a reputation for being very socially engaged is wonderful. But you're rather new-ish to the congregation, right?
Yeah, I've been working there since September.
Oh, wow. So very.
Yeah.
And you came from New York City?
Yeah, I was living in Brooklyn for 17 years.
Yeah. And doing your music there.
Mm-hmm.
And here, too. You've come here to perform at Parlor Room and other places.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, what brought you to what put this part of the world on your map?
Mostly the beauty and the nature, and it's still pretty close to Brooklyn, so I can go back for shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some musician friends that moved out here, and I've always loved the area.
How did you become music director at Haydenville Congregational?
I just applied. I really love the idea of working in a spiritual community, and I saw that this is not only a spiritual community but also very activist-centered, and I love doing activism that's framed through a spiritual lens.
Mm-hmm. You yourself are Jewish.
Yes.
But this is not. It's not it's a congregational
right.
church. Yeah.
I was raised both Catholic and Jewish.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I understand interfaith well.
Yeah, so even if you show
right.
up, it is an interfaith
exactly.
service that will be
It was
happening.
very confusing growing up, but yes.
It's happening. You got all the holidays almost.
Yeah.
There's so many of them.
But also, I would say in both faiths, there's an awful lot of singing to support the faith, and whichever denomination we're talking about. There's like the Mass as form, and then cantorship as in Jewish services. So it seems appropriate and fitting that this would be the way to bring community together to mourn, really. That's all I have.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen this Saturday afternoon at 4. Sing and Grieve for Gaza at Haydenville Congregational Church in Gaza. The music director, Mayor Berger, is behind this event. Would you play us a song?
Yeah, this is a new original of mine. And on Saturday, the congregation who comes is going to sing the chorus along with me. I'm going to teach it in ahead. We pray for the souls that are gone. We mourn all those beautiful lives, and we sing for humanity, that we all may remember our light, and we march for your life, we scream for your rights, and we fight for your freedom. Ceasefire now. Only safety and solidarity. Only safety in collective liberation. Only safety till we're all free. Justice for Gaza brings safety to Jews, to you and to me. And we march for your life, we scream for your rights, and we fight for your freedom. Peace, justice, safety for all. Peace, justice, safety for all. Ceasefire, ceasefire now.
That is Mayor Berger, who is the music director of Haydenville Congregational Church, where this Saturday afternoon there will be a singing and grieving for Gaza starting at 4 p.m.
What other songs are going to be at this event?
I'm doing a bunch of really short, easily learnable songs. Some are songs that people can then sing at protests, like ceasefire songs, Ceasefire by the Peace Poets, a ceasefire song by a local musician here, Sol Weiss, and some other songs. There's going to be a guest song leader, Molly Baggett, who's going to sing some of her original Jewish music, and Sweet Honey in the Rock. There's a whole range. Some songs just purely for grief and water songs, and then songs about hope and light and finding light in this dark time. So hopefully people will leave with a sense of hope and community.
Because you have to do both.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved about when we were corresponding in your emails is your signature is Leonard Cohen, which is one of my favorite songs and one of the most powerful ones, and I hope I can read it without crying. Ring the bells that can still ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And that is my favorite line from Leonard Cohen and really says so much. I am crying a little bit. Can you can you play the Sweet Honey in the Rock?
Yeah.
That you'll be
definitely.
playing? Also local connections there with Evelyn Harris.
Where there is light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. Where there is beauty in the person, there is harmony in the home. Where there is harmony in the home, there is honor in the nation. Where there is honor in the nation, there is peace in the world.
Love
I love
it.
that one.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sweet Honey in the Rock, as performed by Mayor Berger, who is the music director of Haydenville Congregational Church, where this event will take place at 4 p.m. on Saturday.
How long is the actual event? Because clearly it's not.
It's
again,
not 4 to midnight.
It's not
like
4 to
the
midnight.
NEPM website says, but
Yes.
hang out if you need to.
Right.
It'll be about an hour and a half. We'll do singing. There will be some moments of silence, and then some people are going to be reading poetry by Palestinian poets who were killed. Just heartbreaking to listen to.
Ugh. It's also a fundraiser, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're going to be raising money for the Middle East Children's Alliance, which is directing aid towards Gaza right now, which obviously we just need a permanent ceasefire because they can't bring aid in if there's constant bombing. But we're raising money for that organization and raising awareness too.
But it's free will, donation-wise. So if you aren't able but just want to come and participate and be a part of the fellowship, then that's available to you as well.
Totally. We want everyone to come. Right. Like literally, I want the church to be just filled with hundreds and hundreds of people.
Mayor Berger, who is the music director of Haydenville Congregational Church in Haydenville, recently came from Brooklyn to live here in Western Massachusetts and was a musical performer prior to the time working and being the church director of music here. Was activism always a part of the music that you were doing, even prior to being in sort of an official capacity in a social justice church organization like Haydenville?
Yeah, it's I've gone through different phases throughout my life, but for a couple of years I directed a choir for queer and trans people that was specifically singing activism songs, and it happened around 2016, so you can imagine we were quite busy going to protests then.
I wonder what 2024 has in store for you.
More singing. I always ask this for people who write songs of protest, who are drawn to protest songs. What is it about the singing the rebellion that draws you?
What is it about
What is it about singing rebellion that draws you?
So I just think that people can hear music in a way that they can't hear words, and they're softer when experiencing music. So people, if you have an aversion to the cause, you might be able to listen to it if it's through a song. And that happened recently. My friend wrote a song in Yiddish, and it's a Yiddish solidarity for Palestine song. And people who are like really, really pro-Israel or are still kind of confused about the war heard it and were really moved by it.
Where was that? Was it in Israel itself, or?
No, this was in an event in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to get him to come and sing at a synagogue up here too.
Ah,
very cool.
And as we mentioned before, you grew up Jewish and Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Does it speak to both sides of your personality to be able to bring the community together in this interfaith way to sing, to cry out for the destruction of humanity rather than in the different avenues that we've put ourselves in? Jewish, Palestinian, Catholic, all of these things.
Yeah, I think I've always been because my identity is really open. I've been able to just understand all sides. And I think it's the most important thing is that we grieve, that we connect to grief, because right now so many people are just kind of numb to the situation or aren't feeling or are fearful. So much of what is happening right now is just a fearful reaction, like bombing and annihilating a region. And so I think if we can tap into our grief and cry, that'll help soften us towards each other. And so, yeah, we have room in our hearts to grieve everyone. The scale is very different, but then also we can grieve everyone as well.
Also, that's a lesson you can take and apply in a whole lot of other avenues, just in general.
I keep thinking about this and thinking about what would Mr. Rogers do if he were alive right now, and I think singing and grieving, like in a church in Haydenville, would be like right up there at the top about how he would handle it.
I'm so honored.
Mayor Berger is the music director at Haydenville Congregational Church, where this Saturday at 4 o'clock we will sing and grieve for Gaza. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, a preview of the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that will take place at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield. We'll talk with Martin Luther King Jr. Family Services Executive Director Shannon Rudder, Calvin Hill from Springfield College, and Eileen McCaffrey from the Community School of Springfield.
And Congressman McGovern is back for some McGoverning with McGovern. Got a question for the Congressman? Email us at thefab413@nepm.org.
Special thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, Mal Devisa, and the kids, the Beatles, MC Frontalot.
And belated happy birthday to a one Mr. Bowie we are hearing now.
This is David Bowie from his last album that was released on his last birthday before he passed away 8 years ago today. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.